So tell us where you're from originally and a little bit about your hometown.
Well, I was born just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in sort of the rural section, just north of Pittsburgh in southern Butler County. We lived in a town called Saxonburg.
Okay, now tell us about your home and where you grew up because I know that has a lot to do with your story.
Since my parents were so young when they had me, they obviously weren't well off. My mom was in her late teens. My dad, I think, had just turned 20 or was in his late teens as well. And so them just being high school graduates, not attending college or having wealthy parents. They both had sort of blue collar sets of parents. We grew up in a single wide trailer park, again, just north of Pittsburgh in southern Butler County. So that, I think that, we didn't realize it as kids. We didn't realize that we lived in a trailer. We didn't realize that, that it wasn't nice, because the trailer that we had, my mom took care of, my dad took care of. Everything was clean and neat. Although it wasn't high end or super high quality, what they did have was well maintained, well taken care of. We didn't wear shoes in the house. It was a very clean, very organized environment. Even though we didn't have a lot of space, we made do with what we had, and that, I think, really sort of shaped me going forward, in that I learned how to take care of stuff, almost to the extent of obsession.
So tell us a little bit about how your mom took care of the trailer park. I know she's mentioned before how she would mop the floor every single day when she was leaving the house.
Yeah, my mom, and this is where I get my obsessive tendencies from. My mom would literally take the socks off my feet when I walked in the door. I would be, stripped down. Clothes would literally be in the washer and almost out of the dryer before I could sit down on the couch. She would clean the floors every single day, hands and knees. She didn't believe in using mops because she didn't get it as clean. She'd vacuum every day. So you can see where I get a lot of the sort of obsessiveness. It's from her, in that she, she's just as over the top as I am with my tendencies toward obsessive, sort of obsessive care for my cars, or obsessive care for my things, or just, I look at it as taking quality care of things. Some may misconstrue it as sort of idol worship, if you will, but that's where I developed this tendency to just take care of stuff. The interesting thing is that everybody would always tell me, as a kid, as a teenager growing up, they would say, Matt, you're not going to be able to do anything. You're going to be a disaster, because my mom did everything for me. I wasn't allowed to cut the grass. I didn't do dishes. I kept my room clean, but I never really messed it up. I just sort of learned by example. Instead of her beating it into my head, or me having chores, or me having to do stuff, she did it all, like everything, and like a machine. And what she wasn't doing, she would make my dad do. And I think it was that lacking in desire for it to be done incorrectly. So rather than try to teach us how to do it, she just did it all. Which was, now that I look back, pretty incredible. And I'm almost shocked at myself that I would have thought that I would have turned out a total slacker just because she did everything for me. I didn't know how to do laundry when I went to college because of her. I had to ask someone how to do it because she did my laundry always. So.
Now tell us, did you feel wealthy or well off because your home, your trailer was kept so nice compared to the other people? Like, what side of the tracks were you on?
Well, I mean, we lived in the trailer park, but there was two sides of the trailer park. There was the north side and the south side. And the north side were the long-termers, the people that were my parents' sort of best friends, and that's where where the rich people in the trailer park lived. Even though we clearly were in the poorer class. Toward the end of our trailer park years, maybe we'd sort of worked our way up into the sort of lower middle class. But the sort of the south side of the trailer park is where all the people, where the transient people would come. That's where the pit bulls would be. That's where the problems would be. And there was sort of a grouping of families in the trailer park that if something was going down, that everybody knew to just pull the kids into a trailer. So we grew up on the nice side. So in that sort of environment, we were the rich kids. But in comparison to the rest of the world, we're obviously pretty poor. So we felt like, at least I felt like, I never really thought about, oh my gosh, my friends are going to come over to our trailer. It never occurred to me that we weren't well off, and that I think shapes you. I think it drives you, whether it's subconsciously or purposely. I think that sort of combination of respecting what you have, but maybe not understanding what you don't. I don't even really know how to explain that, but I think that's an important sort of, I don't know that I could explain it or put it into words, but I think it's an important part of my life of, growing up in a trailer, but not feeling like we were poor. Just something that I think is important.
So, how much did your parents sell the trailer for when you guys finally moved when you were 12 or 13?
I remember, because I was 13. I was 13 when we moved from Pittsburgh. What essentially happened is my dad was a press operator and sort of worked his way up the food chain over the years. And my parents were so good at saving and so good at not reaching like I tend to do. We probably could have moved out of the trailer park years before. They had saved a significant amount of money for them. And so what happened is my dad worked his way up to plant manager, and then the plant was acquired by another company in Newark, New Jersey. And so they were going to close the plant down in Pittsburgh, consolidate some of their facilities. So naturally, my dad is going to have to get another job. So he was actually, from what I understand, pretty sought after in the printing industry. So he applied and was sort of being headhunted from multiple companies, including that company that purchased the company in Pittsburgh. So my parents, we weren't brought along. I think I stayed with my grandparents and my aunt or something like that, and they would go to sort of different cities. There was 3 or 4 cities that they were considering. Newark, New Jersey was one, and Hazleton, Pennsylvania was another, which is where we ended up. I think Harrisburg was another town, but it wasn't Pittsburgh. So we were going to be packing up and moving. Now remember, my parents grew up there. They lived there their whole lives. Their parents lived there. Their siblings lived there. And I really don't think I'd actually been out of Pittsburgh, and I'm 13 years old. So my dad getting promoted and then my dad looking for another job sort of required us to go elsewhere. And so that meant now we were going to sort of be forced to upgrade. So all this saving and waiting and wanting to buy a house or build a house or own a home, my parents now were going to be forced to purchase something. So I'll never forget some of the people that would come and look at the place. But it was 1993. They sold the house for, I think it was $9,000 cash. Some young couple, it reminded me sort of my parents, young couple, their parents came and gave them, the cash to their mom came and the mom of the daughter came and paid cash for the house. And I remember seeing them count it on the table, $9,000, here you go. Wrote up a bill of sale on a sheet of paper. And I don't even know, I'm assuming that the trailer had a title. I don't even know if that was part of the deal. We didn't own the land. We only owned the trailer. We rented from a guy who owned the whole sort of community, if you will. So that's the story on how we sold the trailer and then moved to a different town, to Hazleton, Pennsylvania.
We've touched on your parents, but tell me a little bit more about the qualities that they have that have rubbed off on you over the years and how they've kind of influenced who you are.
So, I made mention about how, my mom was obsessive. and that's probably where I've sort of gotten some of that anxiousness or that that sort of obsession or drive. And then my dad. So let me sort of back up, and we'll sort of I'll talk a little bit about my dad, and then talk more about my mom and how I think those two personalities shape me. My dad is one of these guys that is super introverted. He would much prefer to hang out, watch TV on his own, and tinker with something in the garage. So obviously, I think I get my introvertedness from him. But then I think I get my ability to sit in front of a camera and chat it up when I'm talking about something that I know a little bit about from my mom. My mom's extremely social, extremely outgoing, so naturally she dominates all conversation and is outgoing, obviously significantly more than my dad. So I think now my dad graduated high school, took the sort of vocational route. And I think that secretly he's like a introverted genius or something. The guy just can figure anything out. Although he never became an engineer or didn't go to college or get a degree in mathematics. I just wonder if I didn't exist, where he would have ended up. I'm always fascinated because his parents were blue collar. My mom's parents were very blue collar, and they sort of took that blue collar route where I've taken I'm wearing I took my tie off because I came home early from the office today, but so I wonder why I turned out the way I did, and I think it's probably because of the combination of their two personalities. So my dad, this super genius, but sort of underachieving genius, if you will, that didn't get the opportunities that I had to grow up fast, and sort of had to work his way up sort of the blue collar ladder, if you will. And then my mom, I'd mentioned she was obsessive, cleaned the floors, took the socks off of my feet. So she had a sort of a natural move toward cleaning houses. So in the beginning, which I'm sure was a massive hardship, my dad was working, he was making a few bucks an hour, and I know that they got some help from her parents and his parents to some extent. I remember, we had well water at the trailer, so we would go over every Sunday. We'd go over to my grandparents' house and fill up the jugs of water because we couldn't drink the water from the tap. But originally my mom didn't work, so she stayed home with me, and then my sister, who's 3 years younger, her name's Carrie, she came obviously a little later, 3 months after me. And so I forget exactly when it was, but I want to say I was maybe 4, 5, 6, something like that, when she started cleaning houses. So it was just sort of natural with her obsessive tendencies to go out and clean for others, since she was so good at organizing and cleaning on her own. And obviously I think that's where I get my sort of organizational skills, is from her. And so the part of the deal with us, living in Pittsburgh, with her being able to clean houses, was that it doesn't make sense to clean houses, make $5, $6, $8 an hour or whatever the heck she was making at the time, to then get a daycare or babysitter for your kids. It just wasn't an option. So we were part of the package deal. So I got to observe my mom every single day. I got to observe her cleaning people's floors, picking up their trash, putting their sheets in their bed. So these were what we would call the rich people. We'd go over to Fox Chapel, or the shady side, the rich area, the wealthier area of Pittsburgh, and she would serve families. And part of the deal was we'd have to go with her. So summers we were there every day, and fall breaks, and we were never sick. My mom made us go to school. We get those Ponderosa, all-you-can-eat buffets for the kids, for perfect attendance. We had stacks of those things. So we very rarely missed. I think I missed one day in 6th grade, and that was about it. because I broke my ankle and I only missed one day because of that. So she instilled that you show up to work every day, and when you show up, you get it done. You get the job done. You get it done right. You get it done as quickly as possible. So she was the work to the bone. She's still to this day, nonstop, almost to the point of sort of workaholic. But she, so I followed her and got to see that, firsthand. So part of sort of, I think the part of what makes me is, my dad's introvertedness, and then my mom's my dad works hard too, obviously, but my mom's obsessiveness with things. Put those two things together and you end up with a weirdo like me. So that I think is the story of those two, and how they how I developed, at least my take on how I developed from the different personalities that I grew up with.
Tell us about when you finally moved out of the trailer park.
So I think I mentioned this briefly, in '93, my dad's company shut down, and we were he had to pick a town to move to and pick a company to work for. So we were moving. It was about 5 hours away to northeastern PA. So they sold the trailer. It was sort of surreal in that the company was paying for the move. The company was paying for my dad's gas to drive back and forth. I mean, we didn't know what that, or at least I didn't know what that meant. I know a lot of people that's just sort of their normal, but for us, it was for me as a kid, seeing the way we'd sort of grown up, and then transition to now we're rich, and per se, now that we're lower middle class was an interesting transition. So again, I'd mentioned that my parents, we probably could have moved out of the trailer park earlier, but now that we're being forced to move, they're gonna have to buy a house. And so it was a nightmare. We'd moved from, so my dad took the job, the company closed. They had decided we'd settle on a house, or they'd settled on a house, and it was a brand new house. It was already built. But they had to go through the normal closing process. And one thing that my mom was adamant about is that when we transitioned, we left. It was during the summer, so school started in September. We had to be there, and they didn't close on the house yet. So we were living out of a hotel for the first, which I'd never been in a hotel before. We were living out of a hotel for the first several weeks of school, which was not fun. And then finally, when we moved into the house. You should have seen me. We didn't have cable, right? We just had an antenna, and we got CBS, NBC, ABC, sometimes NBC, and once in a great while we'd get PBS. We didn't get Fox. We didn't get those channels. We had 3, sometimes 4 channels. And so when we first moved into the house, and in my world, this house was fantastic. It's like. They still live there now. It's I think like 1,700 square feet. It was like a mansion to us. And I had my own room. My sister had her own room, and we got cable. So I literally don't think I left the house. Like, I didn't make any friends right away for 2 straight weeks. I just sat there and watched ESPN, watched SportsCenter over and over and over again. We had 50 channels or something like that, and I was just like a vegetable sitting there watching TV, because I'm a TV movie kind of guy anyway. So that transition from Pittsburgh, we grew up, we had family, to it was just us on our own, and we moved into this this elite community and this fancy house. And the thing that I really look back on, that really just baffles me, is my parents. Again, we could have moved out into the trailer park, or they could have afforded to, but they never reached, they never pushed. They always were fantastically responsible with their money. So when we bought the house, they put like a third down. So we came from a trailer park that was $9,000 to a house. and that house they put like a third of the value down as a down payment in order to make sort of a reasonable mortgage that they could easily afford. And especially since now my dad was making a little bit more money. But that just continues. Like we moved in, I remember picking out blinds and things like that, and they had the money for it, but it was just they didn't stretch. They never it's not like we moved in and they bought all new furniture right away. They took their time. They didn't reach. They didn't they didn't overextend. And to this day, they're still, and I don't worry about them. They're fantastically responsible with their money, and they sort of do the right things in order to make sure that they're taken care of. The problem is, my mom certainly worries about it much more than she should. But part of that worry is what makes them so stable and so, like I said, so sort of fantastically responsible, if you will, which has always sort of been impressive for me, because they've never made a ton of money, and yet they've never had to go without, because they've always planned properly. And part of the thing I wish I had a little bit more of, I tend to reach. I tend to not. I never overextend, but I always tend to reach for that next level, maybe a few years or months or weeks or whatever, a little bit early, and that's maybe one quality I wish I could have a little bit more of that I see in them.